The Spider's Thread by Ryunosuke Akutagawa, Part 1. One day the Buddha was strolling alone along the edge of the lotus pond in paradise. The lotus flowers blooming in the pond were all as white as pearls, and from the golden stamens in their centers, an indescribably sweet fragrance spilled forth ceaselessly into the air. It must have been morning in paradise. Presently, the Buddha paused at the edge of the pond, and through the lotus leaves covering the surface of the water, happened to look down at the world below. As the lotus pond of paradise is situated directly above the depths of hell, through the crystal clear water, the river of three crossings, and the mountain of needles could be seen as clearly as if looking through a viewing glass. There, at the bottom of hell, his eyes fell upon a man named Kandata, who was writhing alongside other sinners. This Kandata was a great thief who had committed many crimes, murder, arson, and worse, yet he had performed one single good deed in his life. Once, while walking through a deep forest, he noticed a tiny spider crawling along the path. He immediately raised his foot to crush it, but suddenly reconsidered. No. Small as it is a living creature. It would be a pity to take its life without reason, and so he spared the spider. As the Buddha gazed down into hell, he remembered Kandata's act of saving the spider. In return for this one good deed, the Buddha thought he would, if possible, save the man from hell. Fortunately, looking nearby, he saw a spider of paradise spinning a beautiful silver thread upon a jade-colored lotus leaf. The Buddha gently picked up the spider's thread and lowered it straight down through the pearl-like white lotuses, all the way to the depths of hell far below. Meanwhile, at the bottom of hell, Kandata was floating and sinking in the pool of blood with the other sinners. Whichever way he looked, it was pitch black, and when he thought he saw something faintly gleaming in the darkness, it was the terrifying gleam of the mountain of needles. The despair was unimaginable. Furthermore, it was as silent as the grave, and the only sounds occasionally heard were the faint sighs of the sinners. Those who had fallen this far were so exhausted by the various torments of hell that they no longer even had the strength to cry out. Thus even the great thief Kandata could do nothing but choke on the blood and writhe like a dying frog. But then something happened. Kandata casually raised his head and looked up at the sky above the pool of blood. Descending through the silent darkness from the highest heavens, a single, slender silver spider's thread was sliding down toward him, catching the faint light as if afraid of being seen. Seeing this, Kandata could not help but clap his hands in joy. If he clung to this thread and climbed as far as it went, he could surely escape from hell. If all went well, he might even enter paradise. Then he would no longer be driven up the mountain of needles or sunk into the pool of blood. With this thought, he immediately grasped the spider's thread tightly with both hands and began desperately hauling himself up, higher and higher. Being a great thief, he was quite accustomed to this sort of thing. However, the distance between hell and paradise is tens of thousands of leagues, so no matter how desperately he climbed, he could not easily reach the top. After climbing for quite some time, Kandata grew exhausted and could not pull himself up another inch. With no other choice, he decided to rest for a moment. Hanging midway along the thread, he looked down at the depths below. Thanks to his desperate climbing, the pool of blood where he had been just moments ago was now hidden in the depths of the darkness, and the terrifying, faintly glowing mountain of needles was already beneath his feet. At this rate, escaping hell might be easier than he thought. Wrapping his hands around the thread, Kandata let out a voice he hadn't used in years. "I've done it, and laughed. But then he suddenly realized that below him on the spider's thread, countless sinners were following him, swarming up like a line of ants, climbing desperately higher and higher. Seeing this, Kandata was struck with such surprise and terror that for a while he hung there like a fool, his mouth wide open, only his eyes moving. How could this slender spider's thread, which seemed likely to break even under his weight alone, possibly support the weight of so many people? If by some chance it were to snap in the middle, he, who had finally made it this far, would plunge headfirst back into hell. That would be a disaster. Yet, even as he thought this, hundreds and thousands of sinners were crawling up from the bottom of the pitch-black pool of blood and diligently climbing up the faintly glowing thread in a single line. If he didn't do something now, the thread would surely snap in two and drop them all. So, Kandata yelled out in a loud voice, "Hey, you sinners! This spider's thread is mine. Who gave you permission to climb it? Get down! Get down!" At that very moment, the spider's thread, which had been perfectly fine until then, suddenly snapped with a sharp ping, right where Kandata was hanging. Naturally, Kandata was doomed. Without even time to cry out, he spun through the air like a top and plummeted headfirst into the depths of darkness in the blink of an eye. Afterward, only the spider's thread of paradise remained, glinting silver as it hung short in a starless, moonless sky. Part 3. The Buddha stood at the edge of the lotus pond in paradise, silently watching this entire sequence of events. When Kandata sank like a stone back into the depths of the pool of blood, the Buddha wore a sorrowful expression and began to stroll away. To the Buddha's eyes, it must have seemed wretched that Kandata's merciless heart, which sought only his own escape, had received its just punishment, casting him back into hell. However, the lotuses in the pond of paradise paid no mind to any of this. The pearl-white flowers swayed their calyxes gently around the Buddha's feet, and from their golden stamens, an indescribably sweet fragrance spilled forth ceaselessly into the air. It must have been nearing noon in paradise.